Next, we have consider approval of the petitions for the Island Lake Woods. Island Lake Woods number 1, West.
Number 9.
Oh, did I
Number
skip
9.
one? I did skip Olivia. I'm sorry. Consider adoption of the special assessment district for the SAD policy. And we have Director Olivia Olson-Budry.
Thank you. So if you recall, we had a study session to discuss the development of a SAD policy on May 3rd, 2022. Since then, there's been several internal meetings with staff and Treasurer Keeps, Supervisor Walsh, and Clerk Brooke. So what is included in the board packet tonight is the final draft version of that policy, taking back the information that was heard during the study session, and then, like I said, as a result of the past several meetings. The policy in the packet before you, I'm just going to run through a couple of the items just to bring them to your attention. I don't have a formal presentation. So just starting at the beginning, it just describes the process. It sets, on the first page, it sets a description of what a special assessment district boundary is, because we have had people say, does it have to be my full subdivision? Can it just be a street? So it's just setting that clarification. And then also who can be a representative for the work that ensues, because there is a lot of work for the homeowners who take on these efforts. On the second page is a long list, and many of these items are already on the township website. So I'm just going to point out the items that have been changed. And most of this is already on the website. Item number 2 is new per the policy, and it's a preliminary step when a resident comes to the township or the engineering department wanting to do a project via SAD, whether it's a road or a water main extension or a sewer extension. The preliminary, and they provide their expression of interest, which is the informal support by the residents without a cost estimate. There's a check with the 3 elected officials internally to make sure that the 3 elected officials believe that this is a logical project. I'll say that. So that's item number 2 that was added. Item number 3, we break down the different types of SADs and clarify some of the costs and what those impacts are. As you're aware, residential roads under the jurisdiction of the Road Commission for Oakland County. The Road Commission develops the plans and the preliminary cost estimate needed to develop a petition at no upfront cost, and that remains the same. However, when we're looking at a public water or sanitary sewer extension, there may be upfront costs if we have to engage our consultant to assist us in developing that. So this clarifies that the township will cover those costs. That is not an upfront cost to the people who are requesting this effort. And then in the case of a private road, we will engage the services of our consultant. However, in that case, the property owners do have to front the money to pay for the township's consultant to do that work, since it's private. Continuing on this, onto the third page, what is new on here is so once we develop the petition, when the petition is released to the people who are going to be circulating it, the township will mail a letter to all of the property owners in the district, letting them know that an official petition has been released. And it's also going to include the name and number of the residents who are leading the charge, shall I say. And also, if a homeowners association is on record, we will notify the homeowners association, just in case maybe it's just one road in a subdivision and none of the members of the homeowners association lives on that one road. We're notifying the subdivision at large. Continuing on, so that was item number 6. Items 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 are similar to what has been included in the past on the website as it is now. Item number 13 addresses if the projects are bid and the final assessment is more than 10% of the estimated cost in the petition, Public Act 8188 requires an additional public hearing. And then later on in this document, we touch base on that again, but just reiterating that point. So the next section is the official petition sufficiency, just making it very clear to the residents what the requirements are to present a petition to the board for the board to consider it. And again, this is all in Public Act 188, but most people aren't sitting down to read that document. So hopefully this document just hits the highlight points for the residents and is easier to follow and review. The next section is what Kathy Weisenborn had addressed, and it speaks to assessment amount increases. So again, the requirement for an additional public hearing, if the final assessment is more than 10% over the estimate, is straight out of Public Act 188. And that is a requirement that is written in the petition when they're circulated. It is identified so residents, when they consider signing a petition, the language is in there. But during the meetings that we've had since the study session, there was some kind of what if scenarios. So that was the second paragraph of that section was added. If the final special assessment cost after receiving public bids exceeds 15% or more, this is not part of Public Act 188, this 15%. Public Act 188 just starts at 10%. But if it's at 15%, then the board will decide. They have a couple options. First off, they have to have an additional public hearing no matter what. But the board may consider recirculating a petition. You don't have to. You may consider recirculating the petition with the updated cost within a 30-day period. However, what's important to note is this still does not preclude the township to proceed with the project based on the final assessment and holding that additional public hearing. So the township can still move forward regardless of the overage on the assessment. And I bring that up because in the case of the road commission, when we work with the road commission, at the first public hearing is when the township authorizes the agreement with the road commission, and the township agrees in that agreement to reimburse the road commission for any expenses that they incur, which at that point would be the design, the bidding expenses, and any expenses up to that point. So if the board were to decide not to proceed with the project, the township owes those expenses to the road commission. So that is a concern if you were not to proceed with the petition, even if it came back more than 10% over. Moving on, assessment interest rates and financing. This section is actually accumulation of several resolutions from the past. So we're just putting them in one place. And this has been past policy and past practices. It has to do with an interest rate if the water and sewer fund is used to pay for a water and sewer SAD. Also, if bonds are sold for either a water sewer project or a road SAD, the interest rate would be no greater than 1% over the interest rate if bonds are sold. And then also outlines the timeline for water and sewer SADs. Again, these have all been past resolutions from the board. And then we get into consultant costs, where it's just clarifying that any costs incurred by the township, if we have to use our consultants, will be are not upfront costs to the residents. They will be included in the SAD if the project if it moves on to be a project, but any costs for development of a cost estimate and preliminary plans would be borne by the township. So when we had the study session, we talked about fees up front. The consensus was there was no interest. There was not interest in making that more difficult for residents to proceed with this effort. However, there is still expenses incurred by the township if this becomes a project. So this next section, the township administration and management fee, proposes adding a 0.5% of the cost estimate for a township administration fee. This would only be applied if the board finalizes the assessment and the project moves forward. And it is covering both all the expenses up to that point and then future expenses, which includes any accounting expenses, treasurer expenses over the life of the assessment period. We touch on municipal bond costs. That's consistently been 3.5% of the construction contingencies and engineering fees estimated. That has been the policy for several years. The petition notice, this has always been on the cover of the petitions, but it's worth reiterating again in a policy to make it clear for everybody that this clarifies that you may not withdraw your signature from the petition after the petition's filed with the township. That's been a question that's come up in the past, so we're just reiterating it here, but it is also on the cover page of the petitions. And then we get on to special assessment district refunds at the end of the assessment period. Again, this language is right out of Public Act 188, but we're just pulled it out here so it's clear and upfront for the residents. Once the if the total amount collected on assessments is larger by more than 5% of the original roll, then that surplus would be returned back to the current property owners at the end of the assessment period. However, in the case for roads, if that surplus is 5% or less, the township can retain it for use in the general fund for road SADs. And likewise, if it's 5% or less for water and sewer SADs, the township can retain it and it's paid into the water and sewer fund. And then the final section of the policy is just repealing the resolutions that were all separate that now are compiled into this document.
You did a really good job on this. We've met a lot. Because there are a lot of what ifs. You know, we have so many more coming now that it was what if. And actually, Kathy Weisenburn touched on it. Instead of forcing back, what if they come before us and say, we don't want it, we just want you to pass it, and it's like overwhelming. Do we want to have that option to still go forward with it? So that's where like a lot of this came from, was actually comments from that SAD study session we had that helped a lot, hearing a lot of that. So your patience with us was very, very commendable, because there were a lot of back and forth between all of our questions. But if you have more, here she is. Michael?
I have a bunch. Okay, so I didn't realize, and if I'm reading the current process map, that the EOI has to have 50% of the property owners sign before you'll issue a petition?
Yeah.
So they're basically canvassing twice?
Right?
Yes,
That's
so it's a requirement that started with the road commission. Before they spend time developing a cost estimate and preliminary plans, they want to know that a majority of the residents are interested in finding out what this will be.
They're not saying they're interested in paying for it. They're just saying they're interested in finding out how much
It will
is.
cost. And there's someone who's
Someone
carried
says
that
yes
petition.
to that and then says no way when they get the cost. So you can't. The road commission was doing a lot of estimates for people.
Yeah,
that-
okay, I hear that. All right, I didn't I just, that was just,
And so we've applied that to the water and sewer SADs as well. And it says on the document that it's a non-committal petition. It's not an official
Right.
petition. It's not committing them to any
Just an-
costs.
It's just getting the RCOC to start the process.
But that's why I could sympathize with the
expression of interest, that's what the E
with
is.
the comment tonight, because as someone who's carried that petition, to get the interest, then to get the actual petition that now you're going to pay if you sign this, and we've been part of that twice. Once when I was on, it was successful, and some neighbors tried it recently and went through the whole thing twice, and we were like at that 48%, and we didn't pass it. So it is a lot of work. So
And
I
the
can understand
expression
why
of
they don't want it to get pulled.
The expression of interest is much simpler to obtain. It doesn't have to be both property owners, or it doesn't have to be husband and wife if they're married. We don't verify the signatures. We match that the names match the address. I had one case where two people signed and they wrote their wrong address down. So I asked the person to please take it back, get the people to make sure they know their address. But it's much simpler, and we've also been flexible in what type of confirmation we'll take. Some subdivisions have been creative. At the Westchester Village, they had a meeting here last week, and they had their expression of interest form right at the table as people walked in, and they could sign it. It's a much more relaxed document than a formal petition.
It's a little
Okay.
easier to sign too, because whether you're a yes or a no, you want to have the answer.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, there's a bunch of typos and things like that that are driving me nuts, but I'm sure we can fix that.
I'll point them out.
I asked that question earlier. Okay. On the official petition sufficiency, it lists an A and a B, right? Okay. Is it A and B? Is it A or B?
So Public Act 188 requires for roads, it only identifies the road frontage. And for water and sewer, it only identifies land area. Historically, the township has also added on the total number of properties.
So it's an and.
It is and.
Okay. Can we clarify that?
Sure.
Okay.
And that's to protect in case you have one person who has this large parcel and they're a yes, but everybody else has to pay the same benefit.
Right. No, that makes sense. I just wanted to clarify because it didn't say and or, and so, okay. On the financing, we tack 1% over the interest rate of the bonds. Okay. Does that get refunded as part of if we collect 5% more than we spent, or do we keep that as a fee?
I don't know the answer to that
I
question.
don't know.
It stays in the district and at the end would get refunded. And that basically, that is for covering issues if there are a number of prepayments and we still have to make the interest. But at the end of the day, it's not a fee that the township is charging.
Okay, so we collect the 1%,
Yes.
hold it in the district, and then after 20 years, if there's excess funds, 15 years, sorry. I thought I saw somewhere in here that they can
Water and sewer, 20
Water.
years.
they can do 20 years for assessments over 20,000. Oh, that's just for water, right? I'm sorry. So is there a difference between water and roads in what you're describing?
Um,
No, the money would be refunded either way. Water says 6%.
Well, that's only if we're using our internal funds.
Right.
If we're bonding, we take whatever the rate of the bond is, add a percent,
1%.
and then we keep that until the end of this district, and then we refund it if it's excess, if it's not used.
Well, that 1% interest is not part of the assessment that we're collecting for the project. So if the assessment's $10,000 and they bond it, and let's say it's, 2% is the interest rate, isn't only just the assessment that gets refunded, not the interest?
Whatever's
It's whatever's
Whatever
remains.
left in the
where
district.
it's left, right?
So it's not just the interest, it's whatever's remaining in the fund.
Well-
And I think it's also important to point out, it's to whoever the property owner is
Yeah.
at the end of the time. It's not prorated during the years if there's different property owners.
That
Yeah,
answer
that-
is the same, whether it's water and sewer or roads.
Right.
It's the same.
And
Well,
how
so
is that different from this township management fee of 0.5%? Is that just a straight fee that we keep that's separate from this?
Well, we don't touch the 1%. It doesn't ever come to us. That's their money and it stays their money.
So the
The
half
fee
percent
is
Well-
to cover all of the
management.
costs.
let's be clear. It comes to us. We
But
hold it
it's
in
not
trust.
our fee. It's
for the
not for
district.
us.
Right.
But the
Yeah.
fee that Trustee Murray is describing is separate issue. That's a 0.5% of the total cost that we're going to charge as a fee
To cover
at the
all
time
costs of
that the
township.
district is opened.
It's a part of the assessment.
It's part of the assessment, so-
$10,000 if that's
Right.
what
Question
it-
is
They're
that
two
considered in
different
that 5% over or under, or is that just a flat fee?
The fee that we would charge that would roll in, which is different than the 1%,
Right.
is a flat fee because it's to try and get, and the reason we did it later is you don't want to stop people from trying to get SADs done. And one of the big triggers is who's going to pay for these upfront fees. So that's why we got rid of the concept of an upfront fee, and we're going to take some hits. There are going to be some that don't pass. I mean, half of them don't pass.
Right.
Half the time, the township is going to take some nuggets on the head, and the other time, we'll be able to roll it into the project. So we're making a conscious decision that we're taking on that risk.
And we collect that at the time of the assessment. So in the case of the one we're going to be discussing in a few minutes, that's a $3.5 to $4 million assessment. we're going to charge $20,000.
It was not included in that one since this petition was issued before this
Beforehand.
policy.
Theoretically, we would. I'm just so that the board can understand the fees, that we would charge $20,000 as part of that assessment. So to your question, it's not going to be leftover because we're going to take it from the
Right.
beginning and it's going to
Right.
go to defray township costs is what I'm hearing.
Right.
So that answers one of my questions. And so the 3.5% that we charge is another fee that would be charged if we bond to cover the cost of bonding.
And think of that as a third-party consultant's fees that
But not us.
we are including now.
Right.
And now we're using it as a percentage. The difference between the two is the 0.5% is we don't collect that now. This is a new fee, and it's directly goes to the township's coffers, not to third parties that we're reimbursing.
Right. But we charge 3.5, even though the actual amount may be more or less. We don't true that.
That's right.
We don't true that up.
We've analyzed that over a number of them, and that's what it comes out to. And people are looking for an absolute number.
No, I hear
I'm
you.
just trying to
Instead
answer your
of, so the
question.
hard part was the other option is, and that's why we had everybody track their time. Hey, look back at this. How many hours did every single person that touched an SAD, and the average came to a certain amount, versus now the other option is having every single one to the dollar, but then now you have people spending time tracking, like, so the cost value of what would be saved wasn't worth the amount of time now you're going to spend, which also you'd have to add on to the cost. Does that make sense? Like, it almost always came up the same when they were talking about what they were doing.
And if I
Except for the
may,
village.
so and Jason can give me a thumbs up. So we add that 3.5% to cover the expenses for outside costs, legal and financing. If that's 20 grand based on the estimate in the petition, but it only comes up to 13,000 actual costs because those costs are tracked. That difference then would be
Goes back.
included in any sort of balance
Right.
at the end of the SAD.
Yeah, but I mean, that's little consolation considering they might have to wait 15 years and how many people are still going to be the property owner of record in 15 years to get that refund. So I get
Yep.
that. I get that.
There's some that they'll benefit from it, some that they might, but most of it's about right.
I understand there's not much we can do about it, but okay, I'd like to hear some discussion about the fee, the 0.5%. I mean, I'm not in favor of it, but I can be convinced.
If I can, I'm not in favor of it either. I don't know if I can be convinced. I'm not certain how much, I know it's costing money, but also people are paying taxes to the township. And part of those taxes are to pay the costs of the staff who look at the SADs and have to work on them. And if it's not totally covering it, so be it. It just seems like it's a tax on top of a tax. Everything else I think looks great. Done a terrific job as far as making it very clear what the requirements are and the procedures, make it much easier and clearer for the residents. But I do have a problem with the management fee.
So just to address that, because I know we always get to hear, and I used to use it myself, I pay taxes. We do pay taxes for what we do on a daily basis, and that covers what we do on a daily basis. SAD is outside of that scope. Just like right now I'm building a home, I would love to use I pay taxes. Why do I have to pay permit fees? It's outside of the scope of the normal day-to-day business, so I have to pay thousands of dollars for permit fees. So it's not a tax on a tax because it's outside the scope. With this, we don't have anybody to do SADs at all. Olivia does all of it, which is no offense, but she looks exhausted because of what we've put on her. We don't have people to do this, and we didn't want to not do it. And then the issue was how do we balance helping people move forward so we can encourage SADs versus saying, I'm sorry, we don't have the staff to do this. You have to go through the RCOC, which is something that's very, very real with how limited the tax dollars are to cover day to day versus adding in extra stuff. And no offense to RCOC if they're watching, but it's a better process through.
No, our process
Our
is
team.
better. I know.
Yeah. Yeah. but it's outside the scope of what we pay taxes for.
So I wanted to add in, having done this before, twice in our sub, the flat fee, I do have concerns about that. But I have another question in addition to that is, Olivia, now it says that if the overall project at the end, if there's an excess of 5%, you return that to the homeowners. But if there's less than 5%, you keep it and put it back in the fund. But I did just example numbers. My sub was $1 million, give or take a little, 60 homes. That would be over $800 per homeowner that just they paid, that was more than they properly should have paid, that would go back in. And that sort of doesn't sit 100% right with me. I mean, 5% is,
That is straight out of Public
That's-
Act 188, but
that's
I'll
right.
let
That's actually the statute.
That's what it says.
We didn't create that.
right, no,
that's
I
the
know, but
statute.
as having done this twice, I didn't realize, I'm learning something new. I didn't know that was in there. And so that was a surprise to me. And I guess I wasn't
That
thrilled
would-
to hear
would
that.
have been there
But
when
I
we
do
were-
know, having been through this, you guys estimate wonderfully and, incredibly accurately, considering that this is like a 2-year project and there's so many moving factors. So you guys do an awesome job. So I wanted to finish with that.
And to your point, you're a lot more open than maybe some have been, because it absolutely existed when you did it both times. But Olivia gives a lot of information that maybe others relied on you to read versus her telling everybody. So a lot of things that we're hearing about aren't new. Just Olivia's actually highlighting and being transparent and opening things up. But it absolutely existed both times.
No,
you did
and that's
it.
what I was reading. I understand it was there, but something new that, having actually been through the process more than once, I did not realize was in there.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't either, because once SADs are closed, that's finance. They
Yeah.
finance handle it.
Well,
Once
there's a-
construction's done, I'm out. So
No
that,
offense, but
that was
those-
something
those
that I was like, I
contracts,
think we
there's-
need to put this in.
There's a lot of information there, and we studied it in our subdivision. We've tried 2 or 3 times to get it, because we've to the
Yeah.
point where it's repeat. And I worked with the gentleman from the county, because first time we went through the county. So and I thought I knew a whole lot about it, but yeah, that was just something I was not aware of. So still
Well,
learning.
So let me follow up on that. So as I read the language here, it says if it's 5% or less, it shall be retained,
Mhm.
meaning we don't have discretion.
Right.
You have
And it doesn't
We
go
have
back to
to
the
keep
homeowner.
it.
Right, and it goes into the water fund if it's water
Right.
project, or in the road fund if it's road project. And that's nice, but
Right.
I
So,
just didn't realize.
so I have a technical question, and maybe Dirk can answer this. Maybe we need Jason's expertise. But all of the other funds that we charge, all of the other things that we charge fees for, like you mentioned, inspections and
Yeah, I
things like
would
that,
love to say I'm not paying
Okay.
any more fees for my house.
those have to go into separate fund accounting. Because can we charge fees in the general fund? We have a building fund to collect fees. We have a senior services fund to collect fees. Do we have the ability to collect fees
Jason,
into the
come on.
general fund?
Can you come up, Jason?
Sorry
You
to
can
put
answer.
you on the spot.
I don't want to
but-
give the wrong answer, and
but-
since you're here.
The answer is yes. For example, we collect ordinance fees in the general fund. We collect passport fees for passport. Actually, that's a good example because we don't have to do passports. It's a service the department has decided to do, and anyone who partakes in that service pays a fee for that. So that's kind of a good similarity to
Okay.
the fee for this. We didn't do SADs when I was hired in, other than water and sewer 15 years ago. Now there could be 4 to 6 in a year so it's a new job and new responsibility that's crossing multiple departments. And so there is a cost that we didn't have before, and thus a proposed fee for you to,
And I'll bet it's going to be real easy to budget for.
it's not, no.
So,
These
But,
are
but,
I mean,
small.
can I just add a quick little on top of that,
Go
because the fee comes into the general fund. It's not, say, for the passports. It goes in the general fund. It's not dedicated to any kind of particular sub-account. It's not just for clerk.
right.
It
Well,
goes
that
in the
was going to be
general
what I
fund.
was just about to
Absolutely.
to
So,
say.
so with this.
Is that yes, it comes into the general fund, therefore we could use it for anything. I could be convinced to support it if there was a way to say the funds that are going to come in are going to be dedicated to supporting another staff person in EESD or something like that, because otherwise, if we start charging this fee and we don't add more staff, Olivia's not going to see any of this money.
Well, technically, the fee will be to cover the 50% that we're paying and not getting paid back on. So the goal is to try and break even. Because again, you only have a 50% pass rate. So we are going to pay 50% of the time. So you're going to have a negative in the general fund. I don't know if there's a way we can guarantee it goes. Maybe we earmark it or do something where it only can be used to offset those negatives. But the goal was to offset the negatives. We will take on more than half of the time, or about half.
So I have another question on the fee versus, like you said, you pay permit fees on your house, but that's your own individual thing. When you do an SAD, residents are paying to improve the roads. And when we improve our own roads, then the road department doesn't have to come out and patch nearly as much for a lot of years. So we are investing in the roads that
They
lots of
actually
people
spend-
use.
benefit to more people than just your individual
Can I-
house.
Exactly.
even
So
but
that
the road
is more of a,
department does spend more time on that because we spend more time on roads that people invest in. So we have a very limited road fund, as you saw. We have less than 1 mile that we can cover every year. If somebody pays to do their SAD, we are going to go out and do more of the maintenance to keep that road than a road that's in disrepair. And that's something that they've been doing for a while here.
'cause I
And
was just
it's-
thinking if there's like a cost difference, like, you know, by getting rid of a horribly, you know, dilapidated road with the new road, that eases some of the burden on the road department is
the
all I
road
was looking
department
at.
actually focuses more on that road starting once they fix it.
Danny, can I make a comment?
Because you focus on the good roads to keep the good roads because they invested in their roads. So you're more likely to crack seal that road than a road that is in disrepair. So not just potholes is only one thing, and it's not even the most expensive thing. Seal coating, there's a lot of other things that are more expensive. But a lot of our road fund, I just want to make sure people know, is for maintenance too of our, I mean, these are, whether you improve your road or not, that doesn't affect if we plow you or not. These are things that regardless of if you improve your road, the roads have to be touched. But we actually will spend more time making sure that their road stays longer because they've spent money on their road. So it kind of goes up the ladder.
I think Brian's got something.
I think it's great that we're having this policy discussion. We've been doing this now, SADs for, you know, as Jason said, when he started 15 years ago, there weren't many. We've been doing them for roughly 10 years. We have roughly 20. We've been having policies over the years that have been pretty consistent, but we've been tweaking it, and this is really a good exercise to put everything together, which again is kind of why we have at the end repealing certain things so we can really not have piecemeal, but have one policy, be able to look at it, have the residents understand it, and be very clear and comprehensive. So we have spent a lot of time, and I think it's well warranted, and it's well warranted because these roads are public roads, different than someone's private home. When someone drives over a public road, it gives a sense of that community. To Val's point, when a plow truck is going over a bad road, it is definitely doing disrepair to the plow. When you're putting salt down on a road and the road is cracked up and has potholes, it's eating up a lot more salt. It's not as safe of a road. So from a community standpoint, a newer road is a better road from the standpoint of safety, from the standpoint of use, from the standpoint of efficiency. Over the last decade or so that we've been doing SADs, staff, whether it's engineering, whether it's treasury, whether it's assessing, have put time into them. Their budgets are paid for out of those budgets and out of the general fund. And quite frankly, I do agree that Olivia's department needs more staffing because as time goes on, our roads are getting exponentially worse, and they are going, as we're seeing, having more and more roads come before us. So I don't think that the answer is having a half a point fee. I think the answer is doing what we've always done, which is including it as part of the taxes that we pay and budgeting and allocating staff to that department as part of our budget process. We've spent a lot of time talking about this fee, I think appropriately so, because it is something new. It's something that I think residents, first of all, don't really understand and don't appreciate the fact that they have to pay for their own road. I get it, but that's the fact. But that is how townships in the state of Michigan work. But to me, I think this is a fee that should be included in taxes. It does improve, not just for that district, but if I'm driving through on Kirkway, if this road gets done, or on a road that has been done, it's part of the general community. And I think it should be included in the taxes that we already pay. The community has increased the public safety, so we will have a little more flexibility in the budget than we've had in the past couple of years. And I think it's appropriate to utilize the general fund for that. And I wouldn't be able to support a fee for it. And again, I think that it creates a value to everyone, not just within that district. And so I don't think that district should have to pay over and above what they're already paying in taxes.
The one thing I'll say, and again, there's 7 of us up here, so we'll do whatever we need to do, but there's 2 things I need to make sure you guys are aware of. Well, one, tax or assessments don't go up because of roads, because there's no way to value that road. So when you say that somebody improving their home doesn't make an impact, it makes an immediate impact because property values go up. So the fact that people have fixed their homes up and down my street, our values have gone up over $130,000. $0 to your assessment will go up, or to your value will go up with the road. And you can, like, I know some people say, well, I never touch that road. Well, nobody ever sees the house that I'm fixing either, but it will affect their property values. But the issue is, we already will have a budget amendment for the stormwater person. We're gonna have to hire, and already she'll be coming to you with a budget amendment to hire an extra person. And just to let you know, engineers, and no offense, are not cheap. This will have to be an engineer, so we will now be coming to a budget amendment now for 2 people. And it will be, I mean, Jason's here when you figure out benefits and stuff, but even just a base salary, you're talking about $85,000 to $90,000 a person. So, and the other one is, now you're adding in benefits, now you're talking well over $100,000 plus half of everything that doesn't get approved. So again, we're talking about being good stewards of money. We've seen some of the mistakes in the past. I'm trying not to repeat mistakes of the past. This is something that they chose not to charge, and it is causing big dollar problems and people who are doing overtime. So I just need you guys to know that if we don't do the fee, I will be coming to you for at least 2 new engineers, one of which will be a deputy level, because of the fact that it has to be stormwater, and that's it. So we are talking about adding a couple $100,000 minimum into this budget for this year, because we cannot sustain it based on the current staffing at all. So it's okay if we don't do a fee, but I need you to know what's behind that. This is not something we thought about quickly. This thought about, like, what kind of mistakes have past administrations done this is the way it's always been done. Where have we lost money? Where are people having problems? This is an obvious one. So we can continue to do what they did in the past. I am not for that. I am one who likes to fix mistakes, but we can still do it. But I will have to come to you immediately, probably next week, so that we can post for them quickly for at least 2 new positions. And I'm guessing Jason can kind of give us some money values, but I'm guessing it'll be probably, when you add in benefits and everything, a couple hundred, at least $250,000.
I want to let Stephanie get in here in a second, but
Yeah.
I'm confused, because if the volume of SADs and the
They're
workload is
increasing.
going up, then wouldn't we hire this person anyway? You're saying that if we don't vote for the fee, we're going to have to hire
Well,
someone.
we can't right now unless we do a budget amendment. So I'm saying it's
okay.
okay if we do this, but I need to do a budget amendment to go outside. So you just saw our audit. We don't break budgets usually. It is a big deal, because one, it's going to affect us on this will be something that next year you'll see you did go above your budget. This is what you did.
Well, not
so
if you amend
Not if we
it.
amend it.
Well, but they do make note of certain things. They do make note of this. So in your big thing, they'll talk about a lot of this. So in the minutia, you're right. But I'm just saying, we can absolutely do this, but
But
don't be surprised, and please have at least 3 other people support me when I say I need 2 new people, and I will be coming in early October with that
Can I
request.
quickly say something? I mean, I agree. I mean, the idea that the team needs support and resources to timely and promptly process these, because that's what the community wants. And we have to give them the resources to do it. Maybe it's the fee, maybe it's the budget amendment, but certainly, I mean, we've got to do one of those things. I certainly absolutely agree. I
And
mean,
this year it will come from
so
fund balance,
couldn't vote no
really.
on this and vote no on the budget amendment because then
Right.
we're not supporting
And you
giving the
have-
support the community
And you
needs and
have
the
to
staff needs.
understand, it is ongoing. So it's not like you're just gonna give this to me once. Now we're gonna get a budget amendment. I'm gonna take it from the balance, fund balance, and next year something else gets cut. So you can't just give money and not consult. I just need you guys to realize, when I come to you to try and fix problems, we don't have to fix it, but that means something else gets cut next year to accommodate that $250,000 nugget. You know, you just gotta remember, it's not like we aren't selling anything. It is taxes in, taxes out, fees in. It's not like we can just sell more product. So you do have to understand there's a definite, right now it'd be an amendment, and next year it'd be adjusting somebody's department to account for the new staff going to Olivia's department.
So initially, when we talked about this at the study session, I was opposed to how it was laid out that we would charge the fee. And when I was going through the presentation, I was, you know, maybe not everybody up here agrees with me, but I really appreciated that you took the feedback, you sort of brainstormed, and I appreciated what you came back with, because originally I didn't like the idea of charging this fee, and then if it doesn't end up getting passed, and now, you know, the residents have put this money in and it's not going to go through. But while I agree that there is a benefit to the overall community, I think it's hard to argue that the homeowners in that subdivision are gaining a greater benefit than the rest of the community. And because of that, there is additional work for our staff, and I think it's fair to charge a fee for that additional work. Just one other thing, and this is an aside, I don't know if it was ever touched on, but with regard to the suggestion of how we're going to allocate, so we allocate it fairly across versus the frontage. I don't know if we want to be clear on that, but I appreciated that suggestion from Kathy Weisenborn.
About not doing equal benefits?
No, so she was saying we're silent in our policy of how we allocate the fee for the SAD.
Oh, gotcha.
So if we want to just explain, you know, say explicitly, it will be, you know, divided equally amongst the homeowners in the subdivision. But I'll just say that I am in favor of this policy as written.
On the allocation issue, if I can?
Yeah.
There are so many twists and turns and so many unique circumstances with every SED that you look at that you simply can't say half a unit's going to be this, one unit's going to be that. It's just not possible. And for instance, in Kirkway, which is a perfect example, there were so many unique properties and so many different ways of accessing the various roads to be paved. Bloomfield Village will be another one. There isn't a simple template that you can just use. It's a nice idea, and I get it, but it's just not realistic.
Makes
That's
sense.
the benefit, not the fee, right? You're talking about,
No,
because Kathy was talking about.
she's talking allocation of benefits. So like
Right.
some properties get one benefit, some get half a benefit, some get no benefit.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a different issue.
Yeah, okay.
Can I just get one more clarification from Olivia? So the management fee, the 0.5%, that's new. But I know in the past, there is also an administration fee that's built into the SAD project. I know there was a township fee in the last proposal that we got for our sub.
The 1% again.
There's no other fee?
Are you thinking that 1% again, which is not for us and is not a fee for us?
I'm just recalling
We
that
don't
the last
have
time
any
we
fee.
did, we proposed to do our roads, maybe 3-4 years ago. It had I believe it had a township fee, an admin fee. There was no admin fee?
I
Not
did
according
not
to
do
the
your
township.
petition. It was prior to my involvement with this process, because I only did this process since becoming department head. And I follow what my predecessor did. You know, maybe the 3.5% was labeled different. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't have it.
Okay.
I have a thought slash question. Maybe it is for Dirk or anybody, but a special assessment district is supposed to be something we design for those who have a benefit, right? I mean, only people who benefit from this project can be part of the special assessment.
Yes.
And I think that's an important consideration because the policy question that has been raised, and a lot of people have mentioned it, and we've Brian, Danny, and I have talked about it a lot, which is, well, when do we charge a fee, and when is it part of the overall tax structure of the township? And this one's kind of a close one. I mean, it's, things that are just individualized benefits. I see that, yeah, that makes sense. We should charge a fee. Building permits are kind of really easy. And also there's a special place to put that money, which is also Michael's point. In this case, there's not a special place to put this money, which is kind of on the negative side for me of saying, well, we charge a fee. But on the positive side is that, well, the whole concept of an SAD is that we're saying, and in defending in court if we have to, that you are individually getting a benefit from this service we're providing by going through this, and that's why you can be assessed.
That's a requisite part of the special assessment itself, is there has to be a benefit, a special benefit, not a benefit that the rest of the community gets. Correct.
And I'm kind of, I was really strong about not charging anything up front, as Trustee Faki mentioned too, and that was really important. But I've been a little wishy-washy on the end part. Well, should we charge a fee? I mean, I don't know. Is it a tax? Is it a fee? When is it should be a fee? No doubt we need the staff and support to do these things, to do them not only so that we can do them timely, but that the community. We really want to encourage neighborhoods to do this. This is the only way that neighborhood roads can get fixed, is through this sad process. And a lot of our roads are coming due. And we need the staff and the resources to work on this. So I don't know, in the end, I think I come down saying that I could support a fee. There is an individualized benefit, charging the folks that are receiving that benefit the fee for the township performing the service, makes sense to me.
Well, I'm wholly behind not the upfront fee, because again, having done this 2-3 times now, if that you went and said, well, we have the expression of interest form, everybody will sign that. That's easy to get your 50+%. But then you get that real petition and you have to go and explain to people that you're going to have to pay for this. Well, if we have to start out by giving money to get the expression of interest, it would be one more hurdle. So I'm definitely against the upfront fee. And
Yeah, and that's come out since the last version.
Yeah.
right. Well, I don't think that was ever,
Took it out.
yeah, that was proposed, but that's never been part of the policy, and I don't think it should be, because I think this just further makes it harder to get your roads paved, if you have to get a fee to get a cost estimate.
Jason, is there a way, if a fee does pass, to put it into something that is used for only so is there a way to, I don't know what the real word is, whether it's earmark or something, is there a way to put it into a fund where that money is only used to help either cover the ones we lose on, or if we do create a balance, that it could be used towards future ones to offset fees? Like where it cannot be used on anything else in the general fund but SADs.
Well, it in my mind, that's already built in by it being part of the general fund. So if you're hiring anyone, or even just Olivia's team right now that's working on it, everyone who is working on it that incurs a cost is being paid out of the general fund right now. So just by nature of collecting a fee that is going right into the general fund, you're already applying it to the costs that have already been sunk. There's no, in my mind, there's no reason or necessity to try and earmark it, if you will, because, and then to address your losses of prior years, or prior SADs, those were all lost in prior years. So you can't go backwards and apply it to a closed fiscal year. And the costs are gonna exceed, the costs involved are gonna almost always exceed that 0.5%.
And may I have a follow-up question? On the revenue side of the general account, will there be a line that says SAD fees? I think there's a line that says passport fees.
Yeah, we can, anything that's worth,
Tracking.
a dollar amount or worth tracking or wanted to be tracked, we can have its own revenue line, just like passport fees, ordinance fees. Some years it might be 0, some might have a balance.
I guess I would just suggest that we just had a millage passed, and it seems to me that when we look at the trust that the community has placed in the township, it's to spend money and do it in a reasonable fashion, in a efficient fashion, and we have the funds to fund the department.
But we
now
don't.
that we're, let me finish,
Okay.
please. now that we aren't putting as much into public safety because that has been increased. So we are going to have more money available in the general fund. And I really think that, as Martin stated earlier, you know, we were more inclusive before. We had to cut things like hazardous waste. We're now putting that back into the budget because that's something that the community felt was part of the taxes they were being paid for. I would suggest this is the same kind of thing, that this is not, I don't think we want to be nickel and diming our residents. I think this does. We have the ability to charge a 1% administration fee for tax collection. We don't, and most other communities do charge an administrative fee. Again, it was, I think, deemed in the past, and I concur with it, that that's part of what we do, is part of what we think that we do as included in the general taxes. And a lot of residents would view that as kind of insult to injury, and I think that's what this amounts to. I respect everyone's desire to fund the positions. We have the ability to fund the positions. It's called the budget. And we will have the resources to fund those positions, which we really didn't in the past couple of years, which is why we had to cut the road fund. And now we do have the resources. So I think that in keeping in context of how we've done this in the past, which I think has worked very well. I don't think there's been any mistakes about it. And now we have an ability to look at it and think, is this the way we want to move forward? And I do think that we will absolutely save money in other departments, well, in the road department specifically, and DPW and salt and things like that, because there's just less salt that seeps into the road bed. The brine stays on the surface. It's safer. So we clearly want to incentivize our residents to maintain the road, to renew the road. It clearly is better for the general community. And it's really, I believe, part of why people are paying taxes. And again, they're not happy with paying this to begin with. So to me, this is really insult to injury.
I think the reason maybe I shouldn't have said mistake. What I mean to say is when you look at needs of $42 million, so we don't really, I'm going to be real honest, we don't have the money to pay for all this. And that's the problem, is we have $42 million of needs that was just shown in a study session. That's why I wanted you guys to see it, because I get to see this all day. Running 11 of the 13 departments, I get to see what everybody needs, and I see all the spots that we're missing. That's why I made sure that you all saw we have $42 million of things that we haven't been able to address because we do things the way it's always been done. And it's not a mistake. It's a business choice to continue doing this way instead of seeing we have a failure. Let's fix the failure, and instead spend the money on this new millage that we just had where it was supposed to be, and use that funds to fix the $42 million we've been ignoring. So that's the problem. I'm saying we can absolutely do this. We do not need to do a fee. It will take away from one of the other things that we have realized, because the way it's been done has led us to OPEB issues. They used to spend their money on things in the moment and forget about the future. We all took that on when we took on a 7% funded OPEB. The way we've changed things and focused differently, and the 7 of us haven't done it the way it's always been done, we're at 22% in 2 years. So I think what scares me is the only reason I've heard not to charge this fee is it's not the way it's the way it's always been done before. And knowing there's $42 million that can affect the entire community. These are not small things. These are big things that affect every single person. I personally haven't seen anything that makes it different than, like you said, legally a special assessment. And I see that the failures will continue, the structural issues that we're ignoring will continue if we don't focus on those.
I think we need to be really careful when we talk about capital projects that are decade-type projects where we may have $42 million in need, and we're always going to have needs. And the comment I made during ARPA, and when we were having those discussions, is we're going to get to them. It's a question of how. It's not a question of a failure. It's not a question of that we were neglectful in the past, because quite frankly, in the past, when we weren't quote unquote funding OPEB, we were paying for retiree health care. The state changed their their requirements of how it should be funded. The fact of the matter is, when if you really want to get into funding, when the storm sewers and infrastructure of the community was being built, we were paying a lot of millage when that money, I guess, could have been going towards OPEB back then. But the fact of the matter is, we have always paid for retiree health cares as we've been going. The only thing that changed was the state requirement to pay it. So we were not failing in OPEB. And quite frankly, when we started funding OPEB roughly 4 or 5 years ago, and now got from, really from 4% when we started funding it to now close to 22%, it really shows what we can do if we want to focus on it. And if we want to do something in a concerted effort, we've been very successful. It's only because, the state changed that. So I think we really need to be careful when we talk about failures, because those weren't failures. Those were priorities that the board made in terms of how they were funding taxpayer dollars. And again, the taxpayers have just voted a millage where we're going to have the resources. So we're not going to have the resources from a half a percent to fund $42 million in these, and we're not going to hit it. So one way or another, we need to act collectively and act responsibly, and I know we will. But I just think we need to be careful when we talk about failures or past neglect or things, couching things in that vein, because I think we've been a successful community, we are a successful community, and we will be. And now what we're talking about is really a tax on a tax, which again, I can't support.
So we can't ignore the fact that when you look at why they set that new rule, because cities that weren't funding OPEB went under. When you look at who was next to us in the bottom of the barrel, you're talking about the city of Inkster.
Yeah, you're right.
We were on there. You have other people who are 80%. Our surrounding communities were 80% funded, 70%. There aren't many of us that were in the bottom of that barrel. So maybe the failure word is wrong, but we were on the bottom of the barrel.
And
we were not the example that you want to be when you look at who we were linked with based on how we did things.
And when the state made that determination, and quite frankly, I thought it was wise. I think from a CPA standpoint, that's something you want to do.
It is wise.
And once we decided to do it, we became exponentially successful. We're not with Inkster. We're not with these other communities that you're saying, because if the state changed the way that, again, I think it's very clear. We need to be very clear that we've always been funding retiree health care 100%. It's that the state changed the way that they wanted us to save for it in the future.
We didn't fund it 100%. We did it like
Yeah,
a
we
credit card where
paid-
we paid the minimum
No,
due
we
while the
paid-
interest kept growing.
Danny,
It's
we
just not a
paid
good financial model.
Every bill that came in, we paid for. So we
But we
100%
didn't look at the big
funded.
bill that kept growing over here.
I'm not
I mean,
suggesting.
we had a structural deficit of $164 million.
And once we looked at it, we attacked it and did it diligently and did it really well.
So I'm trying to attack the things that I'm seeing building around us. And I just, again, I'm only one vote, but I personally would hate to see us go backwards when we've been going forwards, as you pointed out, for 2 years now.
Yeah, and if I can just interject here quickly. So this has nothing to do with OPEB, what we're deciding on, but to Supervisor Walsh's point, it is about looking at the bigger picture. Sure, we have the revenue now, but we don't know what's going to happen down the line. We have our staff telling us these requests are increasing, and so the need from our department is also going to increase. So I don't know how prudent it is for us to say, well, we have the money, we'll figure it out, without knowing that then we're going to have to cut something else, because at some point the money just isn't going to be there. And frankly, we were able to do well with OPEB because of the funding and the market. And now we see the market reversing, and we see that our money into it is declining. So I guess we've talked about this for a long time. I would move that we accept the policy as it was presented to us by the department head.
Is there any other discussion? Are we ready?
I guess we've gone deeper in this than I think any of us planned or expected. I'm seeing a lot of different perspectives, and I think that to Supervisor Walsh's credit, we have gone in a very good direction since this administration changed. And I feel like the OPEB was a glaring problem, that other things were being used with the money that were not essentials. And I think we've gone in a much better direction. And I think Supervisor Walsh makes a great point that this is where it's coming from. This is what, it's like appropriately using the money for the appropriate department and the appropriate project, as opposed to saying we'll find the money somewhere and risk cutting or anything else. So I think we've gone way too deep here, and I think we need to move forward.
Is that a second
Do-
to the motion?
With the edit that trustee Shostak mentioned with regard to just make sure that's an
Yeah,
and,
adding
not an or.
ands.
Yes,
But, okay.
with the amendment with regard to that and/or.
So right now we have a motion on the table from trustee Faki with the amendments, as requested by trustee Shostak. Do I have a second?
Support.
Support by trustee Murray. So all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No.
We should do a roll call.
Okay, trustee Faki,
Yes.
trustee Shostak,
No.
treasurer Keeps.
No.
Trustee Barnett,
No.
trustee Murray.
Yes.
I am yes, and Supervisor Walsh.
And I am a yes. So
Yes is
that's
4.
passed 4-3.
Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you.
Before we let Olivia go, I know it's been a long
Oh,
night.
one more thing.
Oh, she's got one
Yeah,
more
she's
thing.
got
I
a
just
big
had
one
a,
next.
I had a question that isn't on the agenda, just like we had talked about the Long Lake Road, we would get an update monthly. And I just didn't know if you had a quick
do that?
update. You
Can we
do
do
it
that
after?
one after, just because
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just didn't want to forget to ask.
And then you did point out, this does not affect current SADs that are out there right now, so this policy, the fee would not affect the current one before us.